Hello everyone, I'm Amanda Mock of amandamockart.com and I am your host for Courageous Creativity, and today we're here with Shelley Klammer. How are you, Shelley?
I'm great, Amanda. Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank
So,
you.
Shelley Klammer is an online therapist who supports creative women to heal unfinished emotional business from the past. She is also an educator with the International Expressive Arts Therapy Association. Shelley supports women to authentically self-express through spontaneous art and writing practices as a way to anchor self-safety, self-confidence, and self-love. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So let's start with, could you share a little bit about yourself as an artist and a creator?
Yes. So I've rarely been a full-time artist. Maybe I think maybe a couple of years in my 20s, I was working full-time as a gallery artist. But after that, for most of my life, I've worked full-time. And so my art practices have always sort of been on the edges of my life, on the side, so to speak. And so I have become very proficient at developing expressive creative practices that I can fit in first thing in the morning before I go to work, or just before I go to bed, or over tea on the weekends, and a lot of the practices that I've developed are kind of no fail, emotionally healing practices that you can do in sometimes half an hour, 15 minutes. So I always do something every day, but I don't do a lot of art every day because right now I work full time as a counselor online. And prior to that, art facilitation was a huge part of my life. And so I, even though I've worked full time and I do my art on the side, I do have to say that most of my jobs have been art related. I was able to work as a art gallery curator for a while, and then I had a really long stint, almost 10 years, in healthcare as an art facilitator in a beautiful big government-funded art studio here in Canada. It was a very rare job, and so it was a giant studio. It had weaving, it had painting, it had clay, and sometimes we were able to work with up to 40 to 50 people at a time in the studio. It was that big.
Wow.
And so I worked with a team of 10 artists and art therapists, and that was really interesting to me because I'd already, maybe about 10 years prior, been exploring all kinds of different creative practices on my own. Mm-hmm. But working with the other artist facilitators and the other art therapists, we were really encouraged to develop really individual art practices. Like, we had the money and the time to design art practices for individuals based on how they needed to grow. And so that was just a tremendous period of study for me, because not only was I stretching myself, to listen to people's growth edge and how did they need to grow creatively, emotionally, practically, I was also able to watch this whole team of people work. And so I always, I have really fond memories. One of my dear friends, Nika Vaughn, who's an art therapist, she was really brilliant at, she got this beautiful little tiny blind lady to paint flowers, holding a flower up close. And she just became very, very passionate. And these are people at the end of their lives. So a lot of them had dementia and a lot of them had physical difficulties. And so it was just so inspiring for me to watch. And so just as kind of an illustration, I just wanted to share, how we might shift practices for an individual. There was this man, his name was Bill. He was lovely. Like many men who came to the studio, he was a veteran and he loved to weave on the looms, and that was a source of self-esteem for him. And so a lot of men loved the looms because it was mechanical, it was mathematical, there was a lot of counting involved. And so he stayed on the looms for many years, and then as his dementia increased, we had to take him off the loom because he was getting too confused. And so the next stage of his creative growth was hand weaving with his hands through strings. And so that was very tactile and amazing. He created all these beautiful tapestries, and then he didn't quite have the coordination for that anymore. So his next area of growth was abstract acrylic painting. And he never thought he was a painter when he was a weaver. His wife was a painter, and he thought, oh, I'll never be able to paint. I'm not an artist. And he did these beautiful abstract landscapes, like right up until very close to his death. So that's sort of how we transitioned people in a decline. Now, that said, most of us are on an incline in our creative practices. So we have to kind of up the ante in different ways and practice different things at different times in our life. So that's kind of where I am as a creator, kind of a creative artist and also a facilitator too, because I love to think about what kinds of creative practices will suit individuals. That's just my thing.
It's amazing. It sounds like it's been a beautiful journey up until now.
Yes, it has. Very beautiful. Very beautiful.
I've been following your work for quite a few years, and I know that you've explored many different kinds of creative processes. Could you share some of the creative practices that you're engaged in right now?
Yeah. So I've done a lot of creative practices over the years. Well, I wrote a course, you might know, it was called 100 Days of Art Journal Therapy, and that's like 100 different creative practices basically in one. And because every one of those directives I explored for a period of time. Usually I set like a minimum of 30 days of trying something and really immersing into a directive to see what it does for me and how it helps me grow as an artist and how it helps me grow emotionally and so on. But right now, for the past, I guess, over 10 years, I've been doing a form of depth journaling where 15 minutes a day I do an emotional check-in. I go into my body. Sometimes I get imagery and I'll draw a symbol or something. So that's called inner focusing journaling. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that daily, usually before bed, for many, many, many years. And now that we're sheltering in place, this is COVID-19, as we know, with your kids running in when we're chatting prior to the camera going on, the recording, I have extended some of my creative practices to longer than 15 minutes a day. So I've been sitting with my body and meditating and drawing for about an hour. That's one. And then there's another creative practice that I'm going to share with you today, which is more of a fun kind of playful practice, which I find these days I usually need a counterpoint or an antidote to the heavier shadow work that I do with myself and with others as a counselor. Mm-hmm. And so I usually have one fun practice on the go, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you later.
Yeah. How do you decide upon and set up your creative practices?
Yeah, this was fun to contemplate because always, number one, there's an emotional reason for me to do a creative practice because I've had a lot of emotional healing to do in my own life, and I love to work with people on an emotional healing level. So I always, number one, consider, how do I want to heal through this practice? And then number two, being an artist like you, I'm always wanting to develop my skills. So there's some kind of artistic capacity that I want to grow. So, for the emotional component, say, I was struggling with anxiety, and that was one thing I noticed in my art studio work for years was people who had really severe anxiety, they would really calm down with really focused, detailed work. So that's kind of like an emotional choice we would often make. If someone had severe anxiety, we would facilitate a project that was very detailed and required very pinpointed, focused attention. And so when I went through a period of anxiety a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to try really detailed mandalas. I'm going to draw them myself. I'm going to color them myself. And they were marvelous for calming me down. Mm-hmm. Now, on artistic level, you're obviously an amazing artist. Like I got on your website and I saw your beautiful collages, like, oh my God. Yeah. So, I can see that your creatures, I told you before that I loved your collage creatures, and I can see that you went through a period of artistic development around really placing your imagery in these beautifully intriguing, mysterious ways. And so there was some kind of an artistic development that was happening there for you. And for me, I've gone through periods where I just I'm just not happy with my drawing skills. I'm just going to draw my hands every day for 30 days. And so I don't really, I've never really considered myself a great artist. I don't think I was an inborn, incredibly talented artist. I just practice a lot. And so
And I think that's key. I just want to interject. I think that's
Yeah,
key because I think a lot of people think that they aren't artists or that they couldn't be artists, but that, and this has come up in other interviews too, even,
yeah,
but that the more you practice and the more you're in it, you know, the more you grow and the more it, you may not be the type of artist that you thought you would be, you know, but through exploration and consistency and just hard work, you can create some amazing things.
yes,
And I love
absolutely.
encouraging people to do art, you know, no matter
Yeah,
what, even if they don't feel like they have any talent, because I that kind of gets learned out of us at an early age, you know,
it
color inside
does.
the lines kind of thing.
Exactly.
And I'm
Yes.
sorry.
No, please to share. I love to hear your side of the story
Well,
too.
it was just a good moment for you to interject that part.
Yes, so true. So true. Yeah.
Anyway, um, so what creative practices are you engaging in right now?
Well, like I said, I do the depth journaling, maybe just sort of like, leading into our demo. Uh, I've just been experimenting with what I have. So there was the two that I mentioned before, where I'm just doing this fun practice, which I'm going to share more about in a bit, and my depth journaling. But, I'm at home right now. I have limited supplies. I literally have a crate of art supplies that's about this big, not high, because I have an art studio outside of my home, downtown, in the city where I live. And so all of my art supplies are there. And so I've had to get pretty creative during this time. I don't have all my good magazines for collage, so I have just been cutting up shapes and exploring abstract collage. And then with those scraps, I've been doing a practice in my journal, which I'm going to share today. So, like I said, the depth journaling which I've been doing for 10 years, and also this using up my scraps in a journal process, which I can't wait to share with you.
Yeah, I'm excited about that part.
Yeah.
And we'll be there soon, actually. But I need to ask. This is kind of a heavy question, but I like to ask artists this, and all the speakers. What's the hardest thing that you've overcome as an artist? Because it kind of gets to the root of what other people are struggling with too, and it kind of gives some insight into how you overcame that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a little bit further to what we were just talking about this idea that we're taught when we're young that we have to be an extraordinarily talented artist to be allowed to create, to be allowed to teach, to be allowed to facilitate. And I think we all have our gifts as a teacher. Like for me, um, I found my gift in just like how do I create art in a short amount of time? How do I express my emotions? And when I only have 15 or 30 minutes a day to do that. So that was the biggest thing I had to overcome, was this idea, because I was a gallery artist, and it was very, very much based on bringing in a painting and being critiqued and saying, no, I don't really like that one. And I could feel my expressive urges really rising up towards the end of my art gallery career, which was fairly short, but it had an influence on me thinking about how this is just crazy that I have to be deemed good by somebody, by some authority, before I feel like I'm allowed to create. And so that's why I really focus on creating art directives that are really no fail, in that I love collage. Even when I've tried to teach expressive painting, I've seen a lot of inhibition. So I moved to collage, teaching collage very early on, just because it's a total no fail art process where people can just have fun with shapes and colors, and very, very simple ways of exploring emotions and artistic skills that doesn't have to involve a tremendous amount of technical skill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I recognize your experience in the gallery world is very similar to mine. I was only in it for a couple years as well, doing the gallery scene and stuff, but my experience was the same. It felt very critical and very limiting, and to some degree, and exclusive. And
Yes.
not that I don't think that the galleries have a place, or, I would never say don't show in galleries or, whatever, but that there is a limiting factor there. And there is that sort of having to present something to please other people instead of, just going through the process for yourself, which is challenging. And it's not for everybody. Now that I'm kind of out of that, I'm kind of moved away from the galleries, and now I'm finding more freedom in self-expression, and not feeling so caught up in the whole, oh, well, I need to meet the status quo for this month for whatever show is coming up or whatever. So
exactly. Yeah. Well,
so, okay, 2 more questions. The last one's kind of fun. Where do you find inspiration? And then the last one we'll get to in just a minute, but
sure. Well, inspiration, like you, obviously, looking at your studio and your paintings and so on. The visual world is like nourishment for me. It's food. I have to have it every day. And so I love Instagram. I love Pinterest. I love to sort of fill my well with creative things. And I just love beautiful, like I order magazines. This is the story I always tell, but I just order magazines for the beauty of them. And then as soon as they come in the door, I cut them up for collage. But I just love looking at, beautiful colors, and it just fills my well. It's so beautiful. And I also collect picture books, and I'm so excited for the secondhand stores to open up again after our sheltering in place time, because I love to collect old secondhand books to cut up. Like I only have one here. All the rest are at my studio, but I found this great picture book of all these sort of wonderful people, and I'm just going to alter it, and I'm going to cut them out. And so I'm always looking for visual inspiration, and I need that every day. I really do. Like I just need to look at color and pattern, and I have a sense that you're probably the same, Amanda.
I am. I'm nodding my head. I feel like we have so much in common. And I don't want to keep interrupting you, but I'm like, yeah, me too. I'm the same way. Yeah, I keep a big Pinterest board, and Instagram I follow, and I'm the same way. I collect books and magazines and beautiful things. And my studio, the reason why I have this lovely backdrop is so that you don't see all the clutter, because I collect things that inspire me as well. Like I like to be surrounded by my things, and I can alter them at any moment. So yeah, that's the same way. I like to keep that stack of stuff up or whatever.
Yeah, so fun. Beautiful.
Yeah. So tell us about your free gift, and then we'll move on to the demo.
Yeah, so my free gift is called the Dive Deep Art Journal course, and it's basically on starting your own 30-day creative practice. Mm-hmm. So I don't tell you what to do for your 30-day practice, but I show you a wide array in sort of a picture webinar form of not all of the journals I've done. I've done way more than that, but just various different journals, how I started in my journal processes, how I process my emotions, how I choose the sketchbook, how I choose the art medium that I'm going to explore for the next 30 days, and just give tons and tons of examples so that it will inspire people to start their own 30-day practice and see how that feels.
And you do have so many good resources on your website. And as I said earlier, that I've been following you for a long time, but your website is a plethora of just wonderful free gifts to people, and I can't even explain how wonderful. You just got to go there, guys. Go to her website and check out what she has, because you won't be disappointed. It's full of amazing goodies. So do you want to move on to the demo? I'm excited about this.
Yes. Okay, so let me get organized here. Switch gears. I'm just going to flip my laptop down and just do a little sort of show you what I'm working on. So as I said, I'm really working on just playing around as an antidote to the heavy work that I tend to do. Does that lighting look okay? Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just doing these abstract collages. These aren't even done yet. I'm just putting, because I don't have, like I said, I don't have a lot of really good magazines here. All my good art collage magazines are at work. So I've started this abstract collage practice, which I'm not going to show you today because I'm just starting it. And I'm just cutting out pieces and patterns, because in every magazine you can find some patterns, right? You can find some wonderful colors, and even just in an advertisement like clouds or anything like that. So I'm just cutting out patterns and I'm placing them and I'm playing with them. So that's where I'm getting all of my scraps from. So I have piles and piles of these little scraps. And so I designed a creative practice that's both emotional, practical, and artistically sort of driven. And so I thought I would share why I chose to do this creative practice, or design this creative practice, hopefully as an inspiration for the people watching to design their own creative practice. So I'm going to move my scraps aside and I'll show you what I'm doing. I just made up this practice for myself. It's in a landscape journal. I got this journal from my friend Connie at Christmas. It was one of the few empty sketchbooks that I had. And I'm just going to flip through, and what I'm trying to show you what I'm doing here is I'm taking all my scraps and I'm creating kind of what I call a landscape at the bottom. And then I'm adding doodling in. So emotionally, the reason why I'm doing this practice is because I need an antidote to the deeper shadow work that I do in my counseling work. So I have been putting my scraps into here, and then when I have time, I go in and doodle. And the reason why I want to do this journal artistically is because I want to expand my doodling repertoire. And the reason I want to do that is because I guess about a year ago, I finished 365 very detailed mandalas. And so I really liked how relaxing the practice was. I like how it helped me to focus. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about how to doodle flowers. So I actually bought myself a reference book. This is such a great little book by Lisa Congdon. It's Draw 500 Fabulous Flowers. And so I ordered that on Amazon recently, and I've been just picking a flower and adding it into my landscapes. And so I hope by the time that I finish this journal that I will have like a repertoire of new flower designs that I can add to my mandalas, and so and to my drawings. And sometimes I just draw around the doodles, but basically these collage landscapes, these scrap landscapes, are kind of like doodle starters, because I didn't want to just start doodling on a blank page. I just wanted to have some inspiration to kind of riff off of. So this is basically what I've been doing for fun, and I just keep adding. So I can go back in. I haven't added any flowers here. I've just done some outlining and some doodling. This one doesn't have anything on it yet. So eventually I will have filled this entire journal with scraps, which is very practical as well, because why throw out these beautiful piles of scraps when you can use them as doodle starters, right? So that's basically the practice that I want to show you today. Anybody can do it. And so I would imagine, Amanda, you probably, and as I get further down, you can see I'll just do, like I'm going to fill this in eventually, but sometimes I'll have some things and I'll just throw them into the journal. And so this just goes on and on, like almost, I guess about half the journal's full now, but they will be sort of starters for visual inspiration for me to doodle. And so.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm imagining that you might not have scraps yet, right? So you'll have to cut up some scraps.
I have a small pile of scraps because I remembered our previous conversation.
Right.
So I did do like just a little handful.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So if you just want to take your scraps, and then this one here is just from a home decor magazine. It's just got lots of patterns and things, and just cut some different shapes. We'll just use that as the bottom of our collage landscape. And again, you know, you can see that this is like a no-fail project. This is something that, you know, anybody could do. And obviously you can just spend as much or as little time as you want to on this practice. So I just cut out squares and curves and triangles. And so if you want to cut up a few of your shapes, you're only going to need about 10 at the most.
Okay.
And then when you have sort of like some little stack you're satisfied with, and so this is kind of nice. I usually do really image heavy collages, like there's a lot of symbolic imagery, and I wanted to take a break from that because I've just done a huge number of digital collages recently, which were very image heavy. And so I just, for me, it just felt like, oh, the next stage, I would just want to think objectively. Okay, so once you have your stack, I'm going to bring over my journal now and start arranging the pieces along the bottom. So I'm going to work kind of upside down, but you get the idea.
Yes.
And so this part of the practice is just pure fun. It's just like arranging pieces in a way kind of towards the bottom, because in this practice, of course, you're going to do things differently, but you never have to follow exactly what I do, of course. That's a given. But this is going to be a kind of like the doodle starter. And the reason why I do it at the bottom is just because I'm calling these collage landscapes. And so I want most of my imagery to be at the bottom so that things can sort of grow on top.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty simple, just all the different shapes can go along the bottom. And the thing I like about having many pages full of just starters like this is that, you know, some days I'm kind of tired. I've worked full time. I don't really want to have to think about it. And so I know that I have some rules for my practice in place where I'm going to draw 3 or 4 flowers on every page. I have some starters that I just have these beautiful patterns and sort of shapes in place for me just to play with, right? So, and then it just gives me the opportunity, like with these stripes or something, if I want to draw more stripes, I have something there that's going to spark my brain when I'm just wanting to kick back and have fun and relax with art. So really, that's it. Like, it's like about 5 minutes, you know, to glue that down. And I do a whole bunch of these when I'm working on my abstract collages. I just, after I'm done, I'll just go through all the pages and just throw in the scraps.
That seems like it would be such a soothing kind of process to just kind of go on autopilot and cut pieces and not overthink it.
Yeah, this is so nice too, because I've done so much emotional processing through my art making. And for me, this just feels like kind of getting back to my roots as an artist, and just kind of these heavy pieces don't stay down. And just sort of just playing with color and composition and pattern. And I just find it very, very soothing. And this is like, literally, you could open up like a Costco flyer or something and cut out colors. Like, you don't even have to have a whole bunch of magazines, because it's just pieces of colored paper.
Right.
So I think this is very sort of a fitting practice for this time.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah, it really is. It's really good. So are you getting do you have some semblance of a of a bottom sort of level collage there, Amanda?
I am. I have a little, here, I'll hold it up. I think I just put my last piece down for the bottom. You can see that?
Beautiful. Lovely. So you can see how that's already a good doodle starter right there. And you've done the full side, the full spread. That's lovely. Yeah, I haven't really done that yet. So that would actually, oh, I don't know why I haven't done that. That doesn't make sense. Usually, you know why, is often with my expressive journals, I have this as like I do writing on the side, but I can see I probably don't even need to have writing there. So are you ready to start your doodling process?
Sure.
Okay, so make sure I'm on camera here. See, there we go. So you can use any pens. You can use a ballpoint pen, like a, you know, like a really good art pen, a Sharpie. I really like just normal stationery pens for this process too. And so I'm just gonna just flip through here to see if I want to doodle on something else, because I have so many choices. And that's what I'll typically do, is I'll go through and I'll kind of look and see, oh, what do I want to do here? And so I kind of like this one. I'm going to do this one today. And so I know you're an artist, so you can just go ahead and just do what you like, but I'm finding from learning from Lisa Congdon that there's some favorite kinds of flowers that I have right now, and I really like these little tiny detailed petaled flowers. So, and the thing I love about doodling is, especially with really tiny work, is that it's a really good time to practice affirmations or mantras. If you really, this is the part where you get to just really relax and focus in on the details. And I immediately, from my 365 mandala practice, as soon as I get a pen like this and I start doing these little details, my mind just goes quiet right away. And so I just adore this doodling. I just really want to become kind of very eloquent in my doodling style. So that's why I'm doing this practice. And it's also incredibly practical, right? So it's using all the scraps of beautiful paper.
It is, but it looks, I mean, the book itself, I'm envious of. I love books that have been filled up with art and been filled, just flipping through it. While you were flipping through it, I was like, oh my God, I love it.
Oh, I know. I've always collected those too. It just, it's interesting for me after doing so many years of process art, emotional processing art, that I'm kind of getting back to the joyful art that I wanted to do in my 20s. I had so much under the surface back then, but focusing on my art back then was very patterned, and it was very, there was an element of composition to it. And so it was kind of interesting to me that I'm getting back to it now that I don't feel so emotionally accumulated. Just looking for some inspiration for my next flower here. Do a sunflower type thing. So typically in pure expressive art, you would never use a reference. You would just draw from your intuition. And I have done that for so many years. And I have an intuitive sort of doodling style, which doesn't draw upon any references. But because I'm wanting to expand my doodling repertoire, this is the artistic side of the practice, where just as an artist, I want to really get good with the pen. And of course, this, Amanda, is like, you know, where you get so inspired by Instagram and Pinterest and all the different people who, oh my God, the incredible doodling art that's out there right now. It's just really upping my game. Like, oh my goodness, there's just so much inspiration.
I have books on doodling, and I have a Pinterest board on doodling.
Yes, so do I. And every creative practice does something different. Like the doodling helps you relax, and the real symbolic collage is really wonderful. It helps to identify the different energies and aspects of yourself. And so, every creative practice has its own healing components. So it's just interesting for the people watching to consider, what do they feel like they need to do at this time in their life. I used to go sit out in the garden and draw the leaves and the plants, and that just was, I found that was really healing for a particular time in my life. So just got a sense into what is right for us. And I was quite thrilled with this practice because it utilized all the materials that I have, albeit limited. This is just a stationary pen and scraps from the few magazines that I do have. And voila.
Yeah, it gets the job done.
It gets the job done. I'm doing my creative practices. I'm staying creatively nimble. And by the time this book is done, like I always like to say, who would you be at the end of your creative practice? Well, I'll be much better at drawing flowers. They will be coming to my mind spontaneously. I'll be practiced, so I won't have to refer to a book. And I will have used up all my beautiful papers, and I will have had a lot more fun. And I think I'll be better at abstract collage too, because it's one thing to try to do a composition on a dedicated piece of paper, but when you're just slapping things down like this, you get really free. So I really want to free up my style. And I'm going to draw maybe one more flower here. How's it going over there, Amanda?
It's going really well. I'm not drawing anything in particular. I kind of drew some kind of plant coming off of the
awesome. Lovely. Yeah. And that's it, right? You don't have to. Yes. So you're doing a very intuitive thing there, and you're doing some intuitive pattern work, which is lovely.
Yeah.
So that's super welcome too. Like if you just want to draw patterns around, then that's really, and I'm inspired by you, so I'm going to do that too. I'm going to do a series of circles across the top here. And some days when I just can't even think of anything to do and I'm just really tired and I want to relax, I just outline my pieces, with a pen.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of creative practice that anybody can do. It's enjoyable. You have some visual interest. And, I'll do a little bit on here today. I might come back and embellish it some more. And, there's just this whole beautiful way of just playing, which is so important, I find. I'm finding I'm designing a lot of playful art directives now.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's just so needed at this stage of my life. It's just moving more into play and visioning. And so there we have a collage landscape. And I've been finding by experience that less is kind of more. Like I'm finding that 2 or 3 flowers is enough. Mm. And then, if I wanted to relax even more, I could go in and, color all these flowers and sort of riff off of the different, colors in the patterns and so on. So there we go. I'm just coming back up because that's, the gist of it, right? So I just did there's mine. Little butterfly, some outlining, some flowers. And, what interesting thing I'm finding, I don't know if you find this, Amanda, but every art journal I do has a theme. And so I have been finding bicycles. And so there's so many bikes in this journal. I'm like, I'm getting a bike.
That's funny. I do find themes in my work though, when I go through stuff and then I look back at it, especially if it's been a while, and I look back at, even bodies of work, and I'm like, themes that I wasn't aware of.
Yes, yes. And I'm so curious about the bikes because I haven't wanted a bike, but biking has come through my art journaling all through the years, off and on. But this one's loaded with bikes. And I don't know why I'm finding them, but they're really standing out in my visual field. And so I was like, yeah, I think this is part of my play practice. This is like what we're talking about in creative practices. It extends to all healing practices. Like some people feel called, like I have to calm down, I have to meditate. And when I work with people on an emotional level, it might not be like a creative practice they need to do, but they might need to walk every day, or they might need to, get a bike and go for a bike ride, or it isn't always about weaving or clay or painting or drawing. Like we all have a sense of how we need to grow next. And so, that in a nutshell is really how we would design a creative practice. Just think how we want to grow artistically, how we want to grow emotionally, design a practice around that. And practically, being in COVID-19, I don't have many supplies. And so what can I do,
I know, it's a hard time.
Yeah.
And I started planning this summit, COVID was off my charts. I didn't know that it was going to be going on, but now it's such a relevant thing. Yeah. And I think that this summit particularly will be a benefit to people because they will be able to have the time to sit down and do some of these practices that maybe they wouldn't do on. So. But anyway, it was lovely to have you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I want to remind everybody to click on her free gift, which is below the box, and make sure you check out her website as well. And what is your website off the top of it?
It's www.expressiveartworkshops.com.
Okay, that's it. So I have it saved up in an internet browser somewhere. But thank you, Shelley, so much. This has been wonderful. And I will see you in the Facebook group with everybody else so that we can share our work. I want everybody to come in and share what you do. Shelley, I'm sure, wants to see what you're working on, and show her some of your landscapes. So we'll see you then.
Bye. ExpressiveArtWorkshops.com.